Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for coming in and joining us to our second session on green careers and careers in fields of sustainability. My name is Jeff Robbins, and I am an environmental teacher at the high school here in Westfield. This is my first year as an environmental science teacher here. You may also know me from my 24 years working as a middle school science teacher in Westfield in grade 7th and 8th. Today is part of a really wonderful 4-part series that's been put on by the high school and the Westfield Green Team. And it is bringing in various practitioners in different fields in green and environmentally sustainable careers, giving us an opportunity to hear a little bit about their stories, their journey to get here, and what sort of challenges they faced, and a little bit more about things to expect in the future. A couple of things. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A feature found in WebEx. And also, all of these sessions will be recorded, and we will make the presentations available for all to see at the end of the series. So, yeah. Today we have, today our panelists consist of Amanda Nesheiwat, Thomas Summers, and Paul Knowles. And before they get started, Medea is going to take a moment from the Westfield Green Team to also welcome everyone to our meeting this afternoon. So Medea?
Hello. Oh, I'm getting a little echo. My name is Medea Villere. I'm on the Westfield Green Team. I'm also employed at the U.S. Green Building Council. Thank you for joining us either live or through the recorded session. We are delighted to be offering this virtual Green Careers Fair designed to show Westfield High School students a taste of the wide range of potential career paths they may consider that support sustainability. Our hope is that you will be inspired by what you see to take up your talents and use them to keep our community, state, country, and our world green. I'd also like to thank John Henry, STEM and Sustainability Specialist at the New Jersey School Boards Association, for helping to put this together. We are hoping that Westfield is serving as a pilot for a future program that would be even bigger. And thank you to Jeff for hosting us. The Westfield Green Team is always looking for student volunteers. If you're interested in volunteering, contact us at greenteam@westfieldnj.gov. Thanks a lot and enjoy.
Thank you, Medea. So welcome. Our first speaker is Amanda. Amanda, I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing your last name right.
Nesheiwat.
Nesheiwat. Okay, Amanda Nesheiwat, and she's the Deputy Director of Sustainability and Community Outreach. Amanda.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited to be here with you all. Thank you so much, Mr. Robbins and Medea, for inviting me to be here today. I really like talking about how I landed in my career, because I think it really surprises people sometimes where you end up in life. I actually started off in college wanting to be a dentist. So I started doing all these pre-med courses, and really it was because my parents wanted me to be a dentist really bad. Also, for some reason, I liked braces when I was a kid, so I thought I should be an orthodontist. And so when I went through college, I took all these pre-med courses, and when I took Bio 1 and 2, I realized the connection between a clean and healthy environment and happy and healthy people, and started understanding more and more about the science behind climate change. And when I recognized how huge these issues were, it made me really concerned, and I actually ended up changing my major on the spot without even my parents knowing until much later. I don't recommend doing that, but I've always loved the oceans. I've always loved nature. I just didn't really think that there was a career path that was available for me to be able to help the planet. So during college and even a little bit after, I became an activist. I worked with a lot of different organizations, Food and Water Watch, Sierra Club, the Energy Action Coalition are some that come to mind that really embrace and mentor young youth on, how to be, how to take civic action and how to just be, a better, person in your community. I learned a lot of really amazing organizational skills and also learned how to fine tune my message and my story about why I'm looking to protect the planet and help communities. Um, During that time, I ended up um, uh, asking the mayor of my town in Sea Caucus if I could volunteer for a summer to do some environmental work. And he was so awesome that he ended up actually hiring me part-time for the summer to work on a community garden and to create a green festival, which we hadn't had in the community for a long time. So after doing that, it was so successful. The community loved the gardens. I applied for a few grants, which ended up coming in when I got back to college, that after the summer was over, that the mayor called me and said, hey, can you come back and work for us throughout college? Because now we need you to maintain these programs you started. And I was happy to do so. And we actually ended up doing so many different kinds of awesome projects that after I graduated college, they ended up hiring me full time as their first environmental director. And at the time, there was only a handful in the entire state of New Jersey. So it really was I think it was inspiring also for other communities who are now looking to create positions similar to mine that are very focused on creating a more sustainable community. It was a little bit after um, I got my full-time job that I decided that I needed to fine-tune my skills more and went to Stevens Institute of Technology to get a master's degree in sustainability management. And then not soon after that, I ended up getting hired here at the Hudson County Improvement Authority, which Secaucus is in Hudson County, and Hudson County has 12 municipalities. So, I get to kind of widen my reach a little bit to do more sustainability work. Um, I right now am developing sustainability goals. I'm trying to help and advise communities and businesses in Hudson County to go green. And we're even looking right now to switch some of our old vehicles to electric vehicles and put some charging stations in our county parks, which is pretty exciting. Um, I I forgot to mention that my very first job that I ever had was actually at the Secaucus Public Library because they had a summer program. And from that, I ended up, sort of babysitting and, doing any kind of odd jobs that I could. And for some reason, I tried and tried to get a job at Pier 1 Imports. I don't know if you know what that store is, but it's like a furniture store and it always smelled nice in there. So I thought, oh, this would be a great place to get a job. And they never called me back. And I got so sort of like upset about that. And it was only a week later that the mayor of Secaucus hired me. So in a way, I'm really glad that Pier 1 didn't hire me because I wouldn't have started on my path to my current career. So it has been an incredible journey. I always say that when you say yes to what it is you're supposed to do in your life, then a lot of doors open. So as I was, kind of experimenting with sustainability initiatives in the community that I worked with, I also had the opportunity to present the ideas at the United Nations as a youth representative, where I represented non-governmental organizations at global conferences around the world on what we should do to encourage sustainable development and what we should do about climate change. So the amazing thing is I had this international platform to share what communities are doing, and then also to bring back from these conferences what the global community is doing and how we can figure out a way to implement it here at the local level. I'm very happy to have a discussion after this, happy to answer any questions that you might have about, my journey and about the work that I do. And just hopefully this message was very encouraging for you all because, 10 years ago when I started looking for sustainability jobs, there was hardly any. And now there is not a large corporation or city around the world that hasn't figured out a way to prioritize sustainability and hire people in the public and private sector that are very focused on trying to help, sort of change the direction of the company or community to make sure that we protect the planet, protect people, and also consider the economy as well. Thank you.
Wow, that's incredible, and it's amazing. It sounds like this idea at the MA and the sustainability management. That sounds like it's a relatively new program too.
Yes,
And
I was
so,
at, I think the second, what do you call it, cohort out of that program. So
oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Paul Knowles. Paul, let me jump to your slide, and
Great, thank you. Is everyone able to hear me okay? My audio coming through?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I'm excited to speak to everybody today. You might have already detected from my accent, I'm not originally from Westfield, but now very happy to be living in Westfield and to speaking to you all. Tell you a little bit about my story. So I guess I kind of grew up knowing that I liked to understand how things worked. I also very much like the outdoors, and I'm not saying I'm someone that's fueled by hatred, but I just knew I really disliked waste. I even knew that at a young age. I always had great discomfort around things being wasted, whether that was food or energy or just seeing pollution. The whole notion was that was things not being done in the most optimal way. And it's interesting, I didn't actually know what it was I particularly wanted to do until later on. I mean, when I started off, you know, taking on paid work at the same time finishing high school, I was flipping pizzas. I was terrible at it. You know, I lasted about 2 days in that job, and then they were like, "Don't come in again. We'll call you when we want you." And I never heard from them again. So, you know, just a note that sometimes don't be discouraged with your first early experiences. They'll help kind of shuffle you in the right direction. So I guess pizza flipping wasn't quite my forte. Tried out some other little odd jobs, but ultimately ended up going to college in the UK, studying mechanical engineering, you know, predicated on the fact I like to understand how things worked. And it was really while I was at college that I understood about the concept of sustainability. And then I realized, oh, actually, that's what I'm really interested in, is this notion of being able to do things in the right way with the resources we have. So I actually ended up specializing in I have a mechanical engineering master's degree from the UK, but it has a specialism in sustainability. And it's interesting, you know, one of the courses that I ended up taking as an elective in my second to final year in my college program was sanitary engineering for civil and environmental engineers. At the time, I didn't even particularly realize why I was doing it. I just thought it sounded interesting. And it really focused around our appropriate management of water and also wastewater as a society. And I just found it fascinating that, you know, we have a handle at a very high level, a technical handle on how to control those materials to protect public health, you know, which wasn't always the case up until only about 100 years ago. Waterborne disease in our population centers is one of the scourges on the planet. And since over the past 100 years, we've seen some amazing evolutions which have led to large scale water treatment plants, which we rely on every day, every time we turn on the faucet, and also large scale sewer and wastewater treatment plants, which again, we rely on every day, sometimes without realizing every time we use the restroom facilities. And it's, you know, in terms of the way those systems work, it's fascinating. I like to tell people it's about as close to the Matrix as one can possibly get. You know, if you remember, if you've seen the Matrix movies, there's that scenes where all of the robots have managed to kind of put people in these gigantic power plants, and like, yeah, we understand people and how to get energy from them and do things that we need them to do. Wastewater, for example, is kind of like that. We know how to treat our dirty water before we release it to the environment using microbiology, using bugs. And we understand those bugs to the point that we can model them. We know how fast they're going to grow. We know what functions they're going to perform. And we can build gigantic treatment plants and reactors around them. And so having that experience led me to then do a PhD in water and wastewater, also in the United Kingdom. And I was kind of fascinated to find that you can actually get paid a little bit of money to continue learning and researching things that are interested to you. And at the same time, when doing my PhD, I got the opportunity to travel internationally and meet other people who were researching the same thing as me and were incredibly passionate about it. And it was eye-opening that, you know, this research was occurring everywhere and a lot of like-minded people all over the world. And it helped me grow a pretty good professional network. You know, professional network is something which maybe others have already told you is incredibly important. It's more than half the battle in terms of being able to move forward in the way that you want, is developing a good professional network that will help you make leaps from stage to stage. And that's exactly what I did in my PhD. And it actually led me to finding an opportunity through someone in that network to do some work in the US. And that's how I ended up here around about 11 years ago now. And at first, I didn't think this was something that was necessarily permanent, but it went great. I started off working for a startup company. It was, you know, the equivalent of like a biotech company who were interested in ways to convert waste to energy. And worked for them for about 5 years, learned a lot of interesting things about business, and then managed to qualify as a professional engineer in the United States, which now gives me the ability to practice engineering at a different scale than what was otherwise available to me, and was able through that to start doing work under the company I'm with now, Hazen and Sawyer. We are a consulting engineering firm that specializes in environmental engineering for water and wastewater utilities. Doing work now on the scale for clients like New York City, which I never really thought I'd get to. You know, the last project I did was a $1 billion infrastructure project looking at ways to manage New York City's stormwater more responsibly so that there weren't necessarily discharges to the environment during high storm events, which would cause pollution. And also simultaneously working on projects that are designed to recover resources from our wastewater, both energy and also nutrients. You know, we're able to harvest back things like phosphorus and nitrogen in different formats. So there's something called struvite. It looks like a white pellet, the kind of thing you find in bags of commercial fertilizer. We're able to extract that as a recoverable, saleable resource right out of these wastewater treatment plants. So I think it's a fascinating industry, but also a fascinating time to be in it, because generally all of these assets are being repurposed from, you know, the word waste is almost going away. They tend to be referred to now as water resource recovery facilities, which I think is more appropriate for them. And yeah, certainly it's something I'm fascinated in and continued to stay involved in professional networks related to the field of water engineering. And yeah, that's kind of my story. It's an interesting one. I didn't quite know exactly what it was going to be when I was flipping pizzas, but I'm very happy with where I've ended up and looking forward to answering any questions you might have.
Wow, it's interesting to hear both how everyone, it sounds like, and myself included, how we didn't necessarily know what we wanted to be when we grow up, and kind of get into some, like try one or two things that didn't work, and then jump into it. Paul, so working for the New York City's public utilities, it's extraordinary. And the water, I know that the people in the water business in New York City talk about how they have the finest drinking water anywhere in the world. Seeing the proliferation of like the plastic water bottles, does that make you a little bit twitchy, knowing the quality of water that's available from the tap? Or do you think, well, some of the buildings have old plumbing, so like where do you sort on water quality and like water bottles?
That's a great question, Jeffrey. I think it is a shame the degree to which I suppose plastic bottles generally have penetrated our society. Not so much because of the contents of what's inside them, but because of what happens with those downstream. And, you know, we're all aware of the environmental impacts of things like plastic packaging as it floats around in fields the size of Texas in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, for example. So, you know, what I would say is I think that absolutely folks have a right to understand that they are drinking quality drinking water, and there's a lot of oversight of this from both a federal and state level of water utilities to make sure they provide good quality water. And generally speaking, the water that you're going to get out of your faucets is an incredibly high quality. And people do drink it every day and they're absolutely fine. Some folks like to have a filter in the refrigerator just to give them a little bit of extra mental security. And then there's other folks that, like you say, prefer to drink bottled water. I'd say that is an individual choice. If you will, the protections are in place from the regulatory authorities, such that if you choose to drink your tap water, you're going to be very safe. And one would only ask that if you do drink bottled water, that you manage that waste as responsibly as you possibly can. And I personally look forward to a time when we have eliminated plastic bottled drinking water, but mainly for the reason of the waste than because of the water quality. So,
excellent, thank you. And then we're going to have a little bit of a plot twist today. Medea is going to be joining us and telling us a little bit about her journey today.
Hello. So I'm Medea Villere. As I mentioned, I'm on the green team in Westfield. I also work at the U.S. Green Building Council. I almost said New Jersey because I worked at the USGBC in New Jersey for 8 years, and a little over a year ago, I joined the national organization, international organization. But let me go back a little bit. I grew up, I loved art, I loved photography, I always loved nature. I loved to go to the beach and the woods and pick things up and look at rocks and sticks and look for animals. And as I was growing up, you know, you notice things that are maybe don't belong in nature, garbage or whatever. I think that I didn't think of myself as going into an environmental career early on. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do, but after high school, I didn't go straight to college. I traveled a little bit. I worked in retail. I had a bunch of weird jobs. I worked at Pier 1 Imports. A friend of mine used to tease me that I had had so many jobs that she couldn't keep track. But I think I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to college late. And once I got there, I thought, you know, I'm really passionate about the environment. I was eating organic. I was, you know, trying to use less, recycle more, and all that stuff. So I started studying environmental policy at Rutgers, and it was great. It just clicked. And I got interested in the major there is what's called in other schools human ecology. So if you want to look that up, it's very interesting. But at Rutgers, we call it EPIB, Environmental Policy, Institutions, and Behavior. So part of that is about behavior change and what humans can do to improve our impact on the environment. And I'm one of those people that thinks that the environment deserves to be taken care of in its own right. But I also think, hey, if people choose not to take care of it, it's only going to hurt us as inhabitants. You know, plastics are going to hurt us, and pollution is going to hurt us, and the world will live on without us. So I went to college late. I graduated. Oh, they had internships available, and I took advantage of those, and I highly recommend them. I mean, for one thing, they're great for making connections. They look good on your resume. But most importantly, my experience was that it helped me figure out what I liked and didn't like. And there's really nothing like being in that environment, being in a job to know what it's really like. So I did a very short one at the EPA. I did one at the Office of Smart Growth in New Jersey. These were all through school. And one at the Children's Health Environmental Coalition, which was a nonprofit. And I liked it so much. And they liked me. And they had a summer opening the summer after that, right before my last year in college. And they offered me a position. So I worked there all summer. And I drove down to Princeton and got a lot of great experience. And then I went back for my last year of school. And then I was like, you know, I like nonprofits. So when I finished school, I got a job at the Solid Waste Resource Renewal Group, which was based at Rutgers. They're not there anymore, but that was a good experience. And when that job ended, I needed to look again. So I was networking, as Paul mentioned, super important. And I joined the U.S. Green Building Council as a member. And I went to conferences and I went to every networking opportunity I could. And I met people and I learned really cool stuff. And conferences were just fantastic. I was like a sponge, just eating it all up. So my next job was at the Rutgers Center for Green Building. And that was really a great fit. It was sustainability. It was, municipal stuff. And then I overlapped at a job with the New Jersey Sustainable State Institute while I was working there. They shared a couple staff and I was one of them. So while I was there at those two institutions, we started creating Sustainable Jersey, which someone mentioned in yesterday's call. I think it was Angela mentioned it. So that was about creating actions that towns can do all over the state to be more sustainable. And it was wonderful. It was just a great experience. Oh, and I forgot to mention, when I was graduating and people would say, what was your major? And I would say environmental policy. They would laugh and say, well, you have to move to California if you want to get a job doing that. Now, there wasn't a sustainability major. People were talking about sustainability, but there wasn't one at Rutgers. There were a couple in other parts of the state, maybe, or other colleges. But this was as close as I could get to a sustainability major. And my jobs were all in sustainability. And I was just telling my friend Lois on the green team the other day that I got offered other environmental jobs, but I didn't want other environmental jobs. I wanted sustainability. I had a really specific thing in mind. I was older. I was like, I don't have the time to spend another 10 years working my way up to a sustainability job. So I held out, and that's when I got the Rutgers Center for Green Building job. So, a couple years later, people would say, how did you get this job at Sustainable Jersey? Like, I didn't even know it existed. And I said, well, it didn't exist when I got the job. And, I think just, you could take your time, you can network, you can do whatever you need to do to find the right fit for yourself. So then I was at Sustainable Jersey for a few years, and my lifestyle changed. I had a kid, I had a baby, and I needed something closer to home. It was a long ride to get down to Sustainable Jersey. And I looked around and I was like, oh, I've always been a big volunteer with USGBC. It had been a big part of my career, and I loved the people there, and they had an opening, and it just was a perfect fit for me at the time. So I switched, and now I'm at the national USGBC level, and I'm the regional coordinator for Middle Atlantic and New England region. So that's 10 states, and I'm getting to meet people across the country that are doing this kind of work. And if you don't know what the U.S. Green Building Council is, I forgot to say, we're a certification organization for green buildings. And so green buildings help to kind of lower emissions, lower energy costs, but there's also an aspect for indoor environmental quality. So there's a lot of health aspects, which is very relevant right now with COVID. Everybody's talking about indoor air quality and health, and there's materials. So, material reuse, how close are the materials to the building? There's a lot of different aspects about it. So very cool stuff going on. There's a LEED building in Westfield, the county building, over by the Westfield Diner. If you know that county police building, that's LEED. And there's some homes in Westfield that are LEED as well. The Empire State Building is certified with LEED, and the Javits Center extension was just certified a couple weeks ago. But if you're interested in that at all, feel free to follow up with me, and I can tell you more. And joining your green team is another great way to get involved. If either here or anywhere. I mean, green teams are kind of a Sustainable Jersey thing, but they have them all over the place, and it's a good way to meet people of like mind. And I think that covers it. I could go on, but I'll stop there.
That was excellent. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And Rutgers has some absolutely amazing programs. And Douglas is an extraordinary college with a lot of great offerings there on campus.
Yay,
Um,
that's
Douglas, yes. Um, for all three of our panelists, and this is hard because it's like if you asked me 3 years ago what I would predict for the future, I wouldn't be able to predict what's happening now. But what sort of big trends do you see coming in sustainability? And do you feel that there's going to be a difference in the urban, suburban, and like rural venues or like environments?
I guess, can I start?
Sure.
Okay, so I think that there is a lot of excitement about this idea about zero waste. Um, I think that a lot of cities and a lot of communities are rethinking the resources that they're using to package food waste and what we're going to be doing with that to keep it out of landfills. The plastics crisis, when can we, at what point do we say enough is enough with plastics that don't have a market and cannot be and shouldn't be recycled curbside? So I think that we're going to see this new trend coming to the private and public sector, kind of looking at something that I don't think we've really looked at before to make the connection between climate and waste, which is, all this stuff that we are producing as an individual, as a consumer. Then what I think we're going to see more of in urban and suburban communities across the country, this is just my view on things, for what I've seen, is this idea of resiliency, of how do we create much more resilient communities and adapt to climate change. When it comes to droughts, when it comes to soil erosion, when it comes to, flooding issues and more extreme weather events, and more blackouts because of extreme weather events, how are we going to be able to protect our communities? So we're seeing a lot of really interesting projects like green infrastructure, so we can reduce the amount of impermeable surface in communities. We are seeing more additions to communities like, pump stations to be able to pump water where it should go, so we don't have to flood communities, but also putting out rain gardens and trees. We understand more and more the importance of trees in a community. There's so many different economic reasons why we should have trees, but they're also good because they can hold water and hold soil together. And I think we're going to see a lot more, kind of getting us off of the grid or creating microgrids. I think communities are realizing more and more that having electric vehicles can actually help a community. During Hurricane Sandy, the community that I worked for in Secaucus, we didn't have any gasoline for a couple of weeks. And we realized because we had a generator for our town hall, if we had electric vehicles at that time, we could have powered up our electric vehicles and, gone around town to where we needed to go to critical facilities and to help people. So I think we're realizing more that the solution to becoming more resilient is to getting us off of the grid in a way, and using more renewable energy technology.
Yeah, I agree. I also want to add that another thing that we've been talking about a lot lately in the field is environmental justice, especially in the last year. And so in my field, that comes down to things like we have green building is very popular for affordable housing, market rate housing. For some reason, people who build affordable housing see the value of building green, and it's very popular in that market. And we also see a lot of green building in schools, and that is also related to equity because you want kids to be learning in a healthy, safe environment, and a green building is healthier for them. It also is more productive because of daylighting and stuff. So I think big this past year has been health and the environment and equity, and as Amanda said, definitely resiliency. I'm also on a little kind of planning committee for a series of webinars that we've been doing on resilience. And, you know, in this part of the country, we definitely think about sea level rise and, you know, related to things like Sandy, but also other, you know, storm events, but just in general. So we're definitely moving in that direction. And I think that there's a lot of jobs coming related to resiliency and also to alternative energy. So, you know, wind, electric vehicles, a lot of electric vehicle jobs, I think.
Yeah, I guess I could just add to that. Kind of agree with the sentiment. We'll continue to see electrification of the grid. It won't be that we'll come off the grid, but we'll rely on micro distribution. You know, everyone will be a producer pumping into the grid, and with that will come some improved resiliency. It means you don't have one power plant that if that gets knocked out by a storm, everybody's out. You've got 10,000 small power plants in a town, for example, feeding into that grid at any one time. Something we will need to figure out is storage. Our options for storage right now are okay. You know, in terms of the batteries that are coming through in electric vehicles and things like Tesla's Powerwalls, it's an interesting point in that really it's not been something that's been practical before now in terms of doing something like having electric vehicles, and we're at that point, which is great. But in terms of, you know, still matching the difference between when energy is used versus when it can be produced, we still need to crack storage because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind won't always blow. And if we're going to eventually transition away from fossils for our electrification needs, it'll be something else. And so whether that is more pumped storage or, you know, use of systems that are actually producing hydrogen, which can then hydrogen fuel cells over time, and the hydrogen fuel can then be used. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. But if we can crack energy and thereby the climate, we can actually fix everything else as well. That's our real nut to crack in the next 30 years is energy and climate. Because if we can nail that, then we're a pretty smart society already. We have ways of doing most things. You know, we can use energy to get fresh water out of the sea if we need to. It's just more energy intensive. We can put more energy into processing our waste. It's just more energy intensive. So if we can nail down energy such that it's not it's not always a trade-off. Oh yeah, get the waste dealt with, but carbon emissions on the other side of it, everything else will fall into place. So yeah, I mean, I think we'll continue to see a spread between urban, suburban into rural environments, and there's always going to be a spectrum of technologies based on what's appropriate for each of those settings. We're never going to be able to mandate that people move into centers because it helps us all conveniently hook up to a grid. But I think there'll be enough options across a critical mass that will fix this. And, you know, I think about New Jersey as a state. It's made a commitment by 2050 to phase out fossil fuels. New York City as a city has done the same thing. You know, pretty nice master plans that have come out in the past few years related to that. It's very encouraging. So yeah, the next 3 decades, if you're entering this workforce, is a very exciting time to be entering it because there's a plan and there's targets and there's going to be a ton of work. So it's yeah, it's all good.
So I think, Paul, one thing that I'm hearing is that it's just like it's not saying that there's a guarantee of work tomorrow, but there's a very high likelihood based on these commitments to get away from fossil fuels to go towards more renewables. And it also sounds like the idea of energy storage is a really big deal that needs to be like, that could be a like almost a very big thing in the next few years or decades.
Yeah, pretty much, Jeffrey. I think you're right. You know, if you imagine that your solar system is more or less sized to give you net zero energy over the course of the year. Okay, so you're going to be producing a little bit more during the day than you need, and then it's flowing back from the grid at night. Well, if everybody's only producing during the day, where is that energy coming from at night? And it has to come from macro scale, like gigantic storage solutions. And And there's a lot of interest right now in use of battery banks for that. Like you know, certain communities are looking to invest in gigantic battery banks to provide them with storage such that they can discharge back into the grid at night. I don't know. I'm interested to see where that goes. I don't know if that necessarily is the right technological fit. I think there's other things that might work out better, but and by battery banks, those which are predicated on lead acid or lithium ion batteries, but maybe hydrogen fuel cells or some kind of pumped storage as a effective electrical battery, I think could be an interesting thing which will develop out. But yeah, in terms of work, I think we see the number of green collar jobs increasing year on year right now. I don't think that trend's going to reverse at this point, regardless of administrations. And it's for two reasons. You know, right now we're in an administration which positively encourages green collar economy, which is nice for those that want to be in it. But secondly, honestly, we're at a tipping point where actually the economics of the renewable options are starting to outweigh the more conventional fossil options. And once that happens, it's not about people's politics anymore. The economy will dictate ultimately the way it's driven. And we're pretty much at that tipping point right now as a society. So yeah, I do think we'll see a continued upkick in transition to green collar jobs, replacing more conventional infrastructures. So.
Excellent, thank you.
I think it's
Amanda,
oh,
sorry,
good.
go
Sorry
ahead.
for the question. I was just going to say, I think it's a really safe bet when you see that there's so many people trying to invest in energy storage that you bet that there's probably going to be jobs coming up soon as we develop more and more technology to store energy. And also, I would also say that policy can impact job creation as well. And one thing that the entire world is rushing to do is the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you haven't heard about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure you probably have. If you're taking an environmental course, look that up. It's basically 17 goals that the United Nations, or actually member states around the world, you know, over 100 countries agreed to do. And it's basically a blueprint for how to create a more sustainable world. And I think because a lot of countries and even the private sector, corporations around the world are trying to figure out how to solve or how to achieve the goals, that a lot more jobs will be created because of those goals as well. So just wanted to give the SDGs a little plug.
That's a good point. I know a lot of folks in corporate positions, and they all have sustainability officers now. I mean, if you look up Colgate-Palmolive right now, they are doing so much to improve their facilities and their factories and also their products. They're just kind of leading the way in cutting waste, and it's like a different world. So I think manufacturing is changing a lot, and I think somebody on the first night said that there's positions in sustainability or related to green careers in almost every line of work, and I completely agree with that. The head of our DEP, former head of our DEP and former head of the US EPA, is the sustainability person at Apple now. So I mean, everybody has high sustainability positions, and there's a lot for them to do. There's corporate social responsibility, there's investing, and you know, I think waste is a big thing too. So circular economy is coming. And if you are interested in any of that, you can look up Loop and TerraCycle as well.
Amanda, a quick question for you, going back to sustainability. You're in northern New Jersey, and specifically in Hudson County, where there's the real estate's fairly dense, and there's not a lot of space for new facilities and new things. Do you find that especially challenging trying to generate, because there's lots of structures and a lot of older structures? Is that causing any impediments for moving out sustainability directives or goals?
It does make it more challenging. What I have learned in the past is that, you know, sometimes you can't really stop development, especially in cities that are just they're growing. And so what I've done in the past is I actually work with developers to ensure that, you know, hey, can you put in charging stations? Hey, can you please recognize that waste disposal is something that you need to think about before you build the building rather than an afterthought, which happens a lot, and a reason why recycling programs in multi-unit dwellings are a problem, actually. So we've actually been able to work with businesses to help us to achieve our sustainability goals, and it has worked. There hasn't been a time where it hasn't worked, to be honest. We've even had corporations or developments build community gardens in spaces where, you know, people didn't have backyards to be able to plant whatever it is they'd like to plant. So there's that. And also there's a lot of really awesome programs that the state of New Jersey and even our local utility company offer for older buildings to make them much more energy efficient. So we have in Sea Caucus, what we did was with some of our municipal buildings, we've changed out our you know, light fixtures to LEDs through a program that PSE&G offers. I think we saved about $5,000 a year on electricity bill, and these are like 8 smaller municipal buildings. There's programs where you can make large energy efficiency upgrades to your building and take a loan, and how you pay back that loan is the savings that you make every month on your energy bills. You can pay back the loan with that you know, additional savings that you have. So there's lots of different programs. What we're trying to do is get people to actually do the programs, because sometimes people are afraid and it seems so good to be true. But everyone in New Jersey actually pays into these programs. There's a tiny little credit that you pay every time you pay your utility bill. I'm sure, Medea, you already know about these programs already. But that is what funds these programs that businesses and municipal government, faith community, schools can all, hospitals even, can all take advantage of.
Wow, that makes me want to Google what I can get for my house too, because I think one thing too that's really important is that this represents, like, once we put in energy savings or increase our sustainability or control our water usage, that's a savings that's realized for the lifetime of the property that keeps getting repeated again and again and again. Medea, a quick question for you about the green team in Westfield and then possibly green teams in colleges. What can students expect to do with the green team? How would you sell that to students? Especially, we've got a lot of seniors in the call with us right now. What should this be something they investigate in college, and what would they get to do with it while they're there?
I think it really depends on what they're interested in. We do things like park cleanups. We had our Earth Day event where we do a free market, and we are always looking for volunteers for that. And those are kind of bite-sized opportunities. And then, you know, if they wanted to do something more in depth, they could help us with a program. We're looking for some help with our carbon inventory right now, our greenhouse gas inventory, so that kind of thing. But anything in between, and in fact, Lois is in there as a participant. Lois, feel free to put something in the chat to all the attendees and let them know what they could do if they're a student volunteer. She works directly with the students, so.
Okay.
Oh, and college. So that's a good question. I think that varies depending on, you know, sometimes there are some really cool sustainability activities at colleges. I think Ryder has a good program. So if kids are interested in seeing what you can do just to kind of as a club, you could look that up. And then it goes much deeper. We had Amy from Montclair State on Thursday night, and she manages green teams that do more of like an internship together. So she puts them together and matches them up with opportunities to go out to a city or a corporation and do a whole project. And those are really cool. So that's Montclair State University. and it's the PSEG Sustainability Institute Green Teams. And they're about to have their kickoff event for the summer program. So if anybody's interested, look that up. It's in a few days, early June. So Lois says, depending upon what you're interested in doing, we will work with you. Removing invasive species, rain gardens, or pollinator gardens. Yeah, we've got a rain garden going in at Tamaqua, and pollinator gardens are always a good idea. Oh, and you can work with the other schools to help put things like that in there. The elementaries. Waste, energy, alternate transportation. That's true. We do so much on the green team that it boggles the mind. So there's a lot of different opportunities. We have a downtown program helping the merchants understand how they can use less plastics and stuff like that. So it's endless.
So, excellent. And then if we do not have any questions from our studio audience, looks like we do not have any questions. I would like to thank all of our panelists for their time for coming in today. This was absolutely wonderful. It was very exciting to hear your journey to where we got here and how you got here, and also to hear about what you're currently doing. It's been a great opportunity for us and our students, and we are very, very grateful that you were able to come join us. We would like to mention that our last event in the series will be on this coming Thursday, and we hope everyone can come and join us. This event will be recorded, and we will have the recordings available early next week. Thank you all so much for coming in, and I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Oops.